2019's Between the Darkness is a psychological horror movie that we got the privilege of screening. And this is directed by Andres Rovira, starring some names that you may have heard of in some character roles like Lew Temple and Danielle Harris. Jason, we got the screener for this, so that's pretty awesome.
We did, yeah. Someone thought of us and said, hey, these guys know movies. Yeah. You know what that means? We are fooling people.
Yeah, this is actually the fourth screener for the channel, but we always love getting these types of opportunities. Making a movie is real tough, and it's always an honor to have that vision that someone worked real hard on shared with us. So we're going to give our honest feedback on what was a pretty cool movie for a 90-minute horror thriller.
Were you hoping I'd agree with you? I'm just happy to have gotten a chance to screen somebody's film that they all worked real hard on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about the production and what went right with this film, and some of the things that maybe didn't go so right with the film. Talk about the director. That's kind of what
That's
Jason.
our thing.
That's Jason and I's brand, so we'll keep it there. He's a writer, director, producer. He's done stuff for No Stranger Pilgrims. He's done some work for Key and Peele.
This is his first feature, I think, is the main. Mm-hmm. As a director, this is his first feature film, so that's what we like to judge people on sometimes. Use as a yardstick to measure against other directors, and this is not the worst first effort we've seen, and we've reviewed some films of some of Hollywood's greatest directors.
Yeah, and some of them have been real stinkers as far as first films go. So this does show some promise, because first off, I think the biggest compliment I could give Between the Darkness is how it's shot. I think that it might rely a little bit on the drone shots, and I even think it's funny that they even reference said drone in the film, a little meta for itself. But I think that just shot composition, it seemed like the camera pointer for this film really had an affection for kind of landscape shots. Lighting was real good in this.
Yeah, he used a lot of natural light, even on some of the interior shots, and I appreciated that. But, someone who's worked as a production assistant in Hollywood and directed a lot of short films, it seemed like he was pretty competent. A first feature can be daunting, but, I have no complaints about any of the production value, per se. I think those drone shots were for effect. A little bit, because they wanted to show how isolated this place was, and until you get up in the air and see that there's nothing for miles around except one park ranger, you start to get a sense of just how isolated this whole family is.
And we've talked about filmmakers like a Sam Mendes, who knows how to not only shoot interiors but exteriors well, even in poor lighting or nighttime. And I think that he was really up to the task of just shooting it, like I said, just really beautifully. And it wasn't just like static shots, which there was a lot of. There was a lot of like nature shots and like lights coming in through keyholes type deals. But there was also like the characters were you always knew what was going on. Or there was a lot of times where you saw like budgetary decisions where you didn't want to show the monster completely, or there's a lot of blurring effects. But people like us that watch a lot of films, I was like, that probably saved a couple $1,000s right there shooting it that way. It didn't come off as trying to cheapen the production, is what I'm trying to say.
Jaws was a better movie because you didn't see the shark,
right?
So, and
this was probably a better movie because we didn't even get to see half of the gore or any of the puncturing. Probably because, it probably couldn't have been what it should have been.
Well, I don't think this movie was, to the extent that this movie was effective, I don't think it was effective because of gore. Mm-hmm. I think this was more horror than terror, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which we've brought up on like John Carpenter, where he is a big student of showing both, right? Showing both what's terrifying and what's horrifying. Yeah, this was more about what was off camera. Kind of was one of the detracting moments too, because to show tension and to ratchet up some of those scenes, you got a lot of and I'm like, oh, that means something's coming.
A lot of audible cues in this movie for sure. To the extent that it felt like they didn't necessarily respect our intelligence.
Before we get like really too far into it, Jason, you want to take a stab at kind of telling the audience what this film was about? What was the plot of Between the Darkness? And we'll kind of keep it broad and try to do non-spoilers as much as possible, because like I said, this is a screener, so I don't know how much of a wide release this is getting, but just for anyone that is seeking this out, I want to try to be as spoiler free as possible.
Without giving too much away, this is the story of a single father and his 2 children living isolated in some property left to him by his parents. There's no one else around. He doesn't have a phone. The only contact he has outside his own family is a park ranger and her son that come to visit. And he's got some out there religious beliefs, and he's kind of struggling with his own faith. He's being tested because his daughter, one of his daughters has passed away, and his other daughter, who's like 13, 14, is just starting to become a woman and get to the point where he wants her to pick her like patron god, basically. His patron god is Hippocrates, and he's hoping she'll pick something suitable. It's basically the family grappling with this strange religion and isolation.
I think it's kind of a commentary on mental illness as well, maybe mental health in general, because there's some things that are revealed in the film and in the runtime that kind of play on with not just the fathers, but also maybe the kids as well, or if not mental health, but maybe just like indoctrination and what that does to a psyche of a child or a family, because this family has definitely fallen on some hard times. Just seems that these people are just kind of broken. The
family's not sure what's real, and neither are you as the viewer, and that was something I thought was somewhat effective.
Right.
You're not really sure what's real.
Let's talk about some of the cast and performances, because this had some actual actors in it. Like Lew Temple would probably be considered the most well-known actor. He plays the father.
Well, he was also second billed.
Right.
He's had some more roles that you might have noticed. He's done a lot of one episode bit parts on a lot of good television. Really good shows. Stuff like Criminal Minds, Justified, Hawaii Five-0. He had a longer role on Walking Dead. And he's done some horror in the past. So he fit right in. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, Devil's Rejects. I mean, he's been in some great movies. And then you have Danielle Harris as Ranger Stella Woodhouse, which is just, I can't say that without smirking.
They didn't have to call her Stella Woodhouse. The park ranger.
They really didn't. But they also didn't have to say, Dumb Biscuits 40 times either, but I digress. But yeah, Danielle Harris is the child from, I believe, Halloween 4?
Yeah, yep. And 5.
Oh, yeah.
She was the younger sister for Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Of course, that's where you know her from.
Yeah, of course. This is the actress of movies past. But, she... I don't know if it was time... Let's talk a little bit about the performances, because I think that was the roughest part, at least for me, for this film. I feel like Lew Temple was doing... he was doing his best Matthew McConaughey impression.
Yeah, I got the same thing. The way he pronounced every word, it's like, all right, bro, we get it. You watch Dazed and Confused. Lew Temple was fine. He could have chewed the scenery a lot more because he was playing a nut, basically.
Right.
And he didn't. He seemed like he believed what he was saying, and that was good. I thought Lew Temple was fine. He wasn't a problem. I expected Danielle Harris to be a little better. Her dialogue was real bad.
Yeah.
I felt like I was surprised she didn't seem a little more effective, just because she's got such chops. She's got a real good resume, and she's no stranger to horror films either.
That's why I wonder, like, if this had a lot of time constraints, because there was a couple scenes where she almost stumbled on some lines. I'm like, that's the take you went with? Like, were they rushing? Were they,
well, we have 45 minutes for the light entering the window at this angle, and then we got to move the couch, so let's get this.
Exactly. And I'm like, that was probably a time constraint moment.
I don't hate when someone flubs a line a little bit, because people do that in real life, and like Hitchcock used to leave that in, which is great, because if you're going to work with Jimmy Stewart, like, you're going to do 100 takes, or you're going to leave some flubs in. So. Right.
Yeah, it was just that one that was just very like, whoa, that just stuck out, and they're just like, yep, keep it rolling.
Writing was real bad. Like, so
who was?
Danielle Harris.
Oh yeah.
So like her dialogue was just, she did the best she could.
When Roy Grady wasn't like, I think he was supposed to be like, they wrote this with McConaughey in mind, and he's kind of like the hot hippie guy. You know, he even goes just full out butt naked at one point. If you're interested in seeing Lew Temple naked, this is the place to do it.
From behind, so you only see his balls, which is like way worse.
Yeah, but I mean, good on him. He's not like the youngest guy, so he's still. I wish I had the body of Lew Temple, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say, but that's why you guys and gals come to this channel.
He plays a lot of golf to keep limber.
That's right. Which was like, sometimes he was real effective, though. There was one scene, which, again, not getting into spoilers, but he came across as real terrifying. And they did some kind of post work, mess with like voices and those type of deals with some like chemical effects. And I thought it was real good. And like you said, if he
you like the weird voice echo thing they did? Because I kind of thought about some kid in high school doing their first PowerPoint presentation and learning about the different wipe effects. Like, it's like, for real, this is a real movie, you don't have to. All right.
I found the robot voice button on the mixer.
Right. It was. I thought for the time it was effective, because there was like a head trauma moment, and maybe the ears were ringing, so it was a play. It was a play on that, and for someone that's gotten their bell rang once or twice, that type of thing. It let him be like, chew up the scenery, like you said, where I wish he kind of would have done more of that, because when he was just doing his Matthew McConaughey thing, I was like, all right, I'm quite done with this.
His descent into madness was a little abrupt, because the movie takes an hour to get going.
Right.
It's a 2-hour movie, and after you've seen the first hour, literally nothing has happened.
Right.
They've introduced 4 people to you.
Yeah, and I compare that to something like M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit, where every minute was used really well. Like, there's not an ounce of fat on that, and it could come off as real dumb, right? Like, it's just a couple old people being scary, but they, I gotta give credit to M. Night Shyamalan, where he just shoots it in a way where it's both funny and terrifying. But then something like this, like you said, it's just a lot of weird dialogue. Like, at one point, I think she's like, you dumbly gobbly goo or something like that. And he's just like, a lot of words in the English language. Why are you making this shit up?
I think he said, of all the vast words in the English language. I'm like, the amount of words is vast. Are the words themselves vast? Like, that, even that writing was real bad. So
yeah.
So the dialogue wasn't great. I don't know whose fault that is.
It was the director, Andres Rovira.
I mean, he did get the writer credit for this. Wasn't real impressed with some of the dialogue. I think he's a much better cinematographer than he is like filmmaker per se. Like, yeah. I think he had an idea, and I think if he had some help writing the dialogue, some of what I didn't like about this film would have come off a little better. I thought the dialogue was real bad.
Yeah.
To the point that I felt Danielle Harris was squandered.
Yeah, don't squander her. She was great.
And I think the scenes really showed, because somebody like Nicole Sherman, who's not as well trained as Danielle Harris, she had nothing in her bag of tricks. This is like her 14th acting credit ever, and she just didn't have the chops to work with this bad dialogue. So I thought she was pretty bad, but I don't think that was all her fault.
Yeah.
I think if she'd been in a project with a better writing team, she might have come off a little better. So I'm reserving judgment about her acting ability.
And conversely, I thought Perseus, which was the brother Tate Birchmore, I thought he was good. And
because he didn't say anything, so imagine that.
He conveyed a lot though with just expressions and the scenes that he was in. I thought he was kind of the better of the two kid actors in this film
because he didn't have to say any bad dialogue. Like that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that he could just be in the moment and act, and he's not that old. He's a pretty young dude, so good for him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a few more roles like this. And I thought he was good, and I realized the reason I thought he was so good is because he mostly just acted with his expressions, right? Which he did fine at.
Lew Temple was also like the main producer on this too. I think that this was like kind of a passion or he's always been kind of that 12th man or something, like a character actor where he's like, I'll be in your thing, but I want, this seemed like a passion project for him. So something that he could finally be like front and center. But I don't know if this is going to be, I don't know if the Russo brothers are knocking down Lew Temple's door after this one.
Well, this is also his first co-production credit. This isn't really in his wheelhouse, but he's making projects happen for himself. He didn't, he's been acting pretty steadily, but like if he wants to step into something else, a new role, somebody else's first movie for you to have your first production on, I think you can learn a lot of lessons from, look, they made a movie and we saw it. So they made a product. It was as advertised, and I'm sure they learned a lot.
It's kind of one last thing. I feel like if they would have gone a little more hardcore with it, because half of it felt like a rated G Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like it just felt really, really like restrained. And then there were certain scenes where I'm like, okay, you are going for it. I think if this would have been a little bit more effective, and maybe again, it was because of budgetary reasons or whatnot, but if they would have gone a little bit push the envelope a little bit further, make it more of a gruesome horror movie, then they would have captured that audience or that demographic for it, because they didn't, and it feels like a half measure. So I don't know who this movie is for.
Yeah, because it doesn't have anything for the people that like torture porn or jump scares.
Yeah.
And I don't think it executed the psychological element for somebody who, would have liked something like Midsommar.
The Quiet Place. Like, I got a lot of Quiet Place vibes from this.
Yeah.
But it never went that extra step to be more tension-filled.
It was like 3/5 of the way towards doing 2 or 3 different things effectively.
Yeah.
And maybe if they picked a lane, it wasn't terrible.
No.
This is not a terrible movie.
It's not. Who would you recommend this film for? Like, if you're a fan of X, Y, and Z, would you... personally, I would recommend it for people that are kind of trying to break into the industry. We talk about this all the time. We live in an age of the streaming platform, where I think that if this maybe had a little bit more backing as far as that went, this could have been an effective film for a Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon. If this was on Netflix, this would just get lost in all the other movies that are about this good. Yeah. This was because you have some real schlock on Netflix. It's like, it's not Battle for Los Angeles, it's Battlefield Los Angeles, and you don't notice it's the Walmart ripoff until you're like 20 minutes into it, and you're like, where's Aaron Eckhart? Right. Netflix has got a lot of crap like that. I think this was better than stuff like that. The stuff that's like designed to confuse people buying in the $5 DVD bin at Walmart. Like, ooh, Transmorphers. My grandson loves that. Right. I think with enough of that stuff on Netflix, I think if you will watch something like that every once in a while, I think you would be pleasantly surprised by something like this. If you're expecting Midsommar, you're going to be like, ugh, not great. But if you're just going to like just try to watch something, you like read a two sentence synopsis and you're like, that sounds good, and you watch it, you wouldn't be like, why is this on Netflix? You'd be like, oh, all right. It's a thing I watched. I feel like this is the kind of movie my mom would buy on DVD
and then watch it for the first time after having bought it, and then like recommend that I watch it. That she does stuff like that all the time with movies about this good.
Yeah,
with much bigger budgets.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, again, thank you to everyone that reached out and let us review this film. Because, again, I mean, it's not lost on me or Jason that films are so hard to make. And there's a lot of potential here. Like, I would be interested to see what else, Andres Rovira comes up with after this. This was not at all a deal breaker where I'm just like, this is the worst thing ever. I would much rather watch this than John Carpenter's Vampires any day.
Yeah. So to review, the people that were experienced actors really managed to pull off some weak dialogue. I think people that were not as experienced actors did the best they could. And I think that Rovira is a much better cinematographer than he is writer. And if he could team up with somebody that's a little more effective at that, I think he could make some pretty enjoyable films in the future. I think he's got some real good Hollywood experience under his belt, just working in the industry. And as far as first features goes, this was not terrible.
If you're in the market for a Lew Temple butt, this is where to go.
Oh, and partial sack.
Yeah, you have Danielle Harris in this, but the nudity comes from Lew Temple. That's a choice. That is a ballsy choice.
That was Lew Temple being like, I'm the co-producer on this, and if I don't show a little sack, I'm taking my golf clubs and going home.
All right. Well, that's our review. Thanks. Thanks for watching.